Ethics in Journalism by Upper Echelon. Now, if I'm not wrong, this refers to journalism like gaming journalism, not just regular journalism. I think, if I'm not wrong, that's as far as I know.
This video is brought to you by a wallet of champions, Ridge. They pay me to promote them, I also love their products, and that's a disclosure right there. Foreshadowing. Alright, so today we have an interesting topic to cover because I was recently sent a Twitter thread that led to some very interesting discoveries. The topic is ethics in journalism, as the title obviously suggests, and how the relative success of Gamergate, success in the sense of increased accountability or, most importantly, accurate disclosures, is unappealing to certain industry figures. That's the only focus when I mention the word Gamergate today. I'm not going down the rabbit hole and analyzing the surrounding quagmire of harassment and inappropriate conduct, at least not right now. I'll be focusing exclusively on the effects it had from a corporate advertising perspective and the subsequent disclosures that are required, expected, and sometimes never given. It starts with a thread by an industry figure named Bellalara Blondeau, who has bylines in a number of different gaming media publications and previously, at various intervals, worked at other websites in a similar space. I am blocked by this person.
The
I have never
gamer
once interacted with
website.
them as far as I can tell. I have never once spoken their name, and I did not know that they existed until this thread was sent to me highlighting a very particular segment. I do not wish them any ill will whatsoever. However, once I read this chain of tweets, start to finish, and realized the connections between past coverage, past events, and current sentiment, I decided it was time to do a video on ethics in journalism, or lack thereof. Alright, stop. Sponsor time. I have never seen a wallet
Well,
in my
okay.
life better than Ridge, sincerely. Like 6 months ago, thereabouts, I got one and partnered up with them. They supported the channel. Since then, I've used them as gifts for Christmas, birthdays, etc. I've
A
never
shit ton
even
of
once
like
considered them
these
of a wallet. Maybe for
YouTubers
one
that I
time
actually
investment.
trust when
Anyone's
it
good
comes
with
to their
us, they are
sponsors.
guaranteed for
They
life,
always
and I even
recommend
got more
those
designs just
wallets,
based on how
rich
cool they are.
wallets.
You can
Are they
open
actually
each
that
with a
good
click of a
though?
strap. They have sleek industrial materials and designs, room for 12
Like,
cards plus cash.
I
You can
never
use code
use
down below
them.
with code upper echelon. You can
I
get
don't
10% off with
like
free
personally
worldwide shipping.
know.
The quality of a product truly matters.
Actually,
Ridge
yes, I
is
do know
cheap,
people that
which is
use
one
them.
reason, very good reason.
I never
Why make
asked them
money?
actually.
Try one for free for 30 days and send it back if it's not for you.
I need to look at them
Again, the
because
right wallet
people
is
always
driving
recommend them.
to
I don't
you,
know,
and
but
Ridge
look,
is the right
they
wallet.
actually look
Link down
pretty
below, use
useful,
code upper echelon, and you can get 10% off with
especially
free
compared to the one that
worldwide
I have
shipping.
right now.
Big thank you to Ridge for supporting the channel. Now we can really get started, and even in the ad-free versions of this video, I left that sponsorship in because it's actually hyper-relevant to the topic today. I was paid by Ridge to talk about them. The words are mine, I have multiple of their wallets, and I love them, that's
Oh,
genuine and true. I believe in the product,
that
and
was
I'm more than
an
happy to
accident.
talk about it. But none of that ultimately matters because I was paid to do it, and I must legally, as well as ethically especially, disclose that fact. Keeping that in mind, let's read this thread from Bellalara Blondeau. It's long, but it's important, so brace yourself. Quote, all I'll say re Games Press discourse is that nobody knows anything about what they're saying on most sides of my timeline, and also I hate having this convo every few months. Established journos who've been at this a while do not understand the struggles of working at small to mid-tier outlets post-Gamergate. They don't. They cannot speak with any degree of authority on it. That's not mean, it's fact. Likewise, industry enthusiasts who conflate IGN with, say, something like insert enthusiast site here, literally do not know what they're talking about at all. There's not some game journalism boogeyman, there never has been. Also, re media versus journalism convos. I can't partake because all journalism is media. It doesn't matter what reporting you do, it doesn't matter what you cover, it doesn't matter. What matters is that most major gaming sites are owned by corporations driven by ad revenue. I say this as a classical journalism student. The erosion of the barrier between media and journalism started before all of us were born, and it's hard to have this conversation without using that as a frame of reference. And by it's hard, I mean don't do that. Pause. Pause. This is me speaking, not the quote. Now comes the most important part. Back to the quote here. Another thing that nobody talks about is how Gamergate destroyed so much of the community. A lot of the toothless, ad-driven content you see happened specifically because Gamergate happened. Sites added more disclosures. Bylines got safer. It sucked. I say this as a fan of Destructoid between 2009 and, I mean, look, I still go there every day, but the dangerous writers were axed. The radical opinions were sanitized, etc., etc., etc. And it wasn't just them. corporate conglomerates started clamping down really hard on mid-tier sites in the wake of that whole disaster and ruining them. I worked at Game Revolution for a second and saw this happen in real time. And, unfortunately,
Holy shit, that's a lot of
most of this
tweets. They
industry
just
is a
don't
whisper
end.
network of journalists telling each other where not to work, which is something more established voices at bigger outlets might not have direct experience with. That early to mid-tier journal struggle is real. The sites I grew up loving are owned by corporations demanding that their coverage is safer, full of disclosures. Knowing somebody who worked on a game isn't an ethical breach. This is the critical part. Knowing someone who worked on a game isn't an ethical breach, and it's stupid we ever thought it was, and built by overworked freelancers with free-to-peanuts pay. That's why, I don't know, my professional relationship with gaming is about to be very different on purpose, and it's explicitly because I've been burnt by an abusive system built on the desecrated remains of something that was beautiful. But none of this is to say, oh, that work is more corporate, it's bad. Nah, bitch, this whole industry is corporate. Amazing work gets done in places like IGN, Polygon, Kotaku, Vice, etc., etc., etc. Hats off to the incredible people doing great work at those places. As for the sites that inform my own voice, Fanbyte, Vice, Bullet Points, Hard Drive, Unwinnable, Gaming, Into the Spine, Paste. These are a few of them. Source, writing online since 2010.
That's not my Discord, by the way.
2013,
That's
working
this guy's
in the biz
Discord.
since 2016. Anyway, I have food poisoning, so I'm going to go puke and play Tomb Raider or something. End quote. Okay, that's the thread.
That was
It's
a
long, I know.
shit
There are a couple
ton of
critical things there that need to be
tweets
extracted.
or
First, quote,
responses
the sites I grew up
to
loving
herself.
are owned by corporations demanding that their coverage is safer, full of disclosures. Knowing somebody who worked on a game isn't an ethical breach, and it's stupid we ever
It's
thought
a
it was,
bias.
and built by
It
overworked
has to do with
freelancers
biases,
free
but
to pay. End quote. Now, I can't realistically speak to the compensation part, but what I can speak to is the disclosures part. Advertising does have standards. You get paid, you need to disclose that. You have a vested interest, personal or financial, either or, in the promotion of a game, you need to disclose that. People need to know what your ties are to any given project if that changes the speculative objectivity of your opinion. And yes, it's incredibly difficult to actually enforce that to any rigidly consistent standard or extreme, but that should at least be the attempted baseline. This thread very much laments the idea that media outlets must use so many disclosures. It refers to the current state of articles and advertising as toothless and even abusive, with the claim that the journalistic/media machine has been desecrated by corporate disclosure-driven safety, built upon something that was once beautiful previously, and it concludes with a list of outlets that inform this person's voice. Pretty intense, but we're not finished. One of those names jumped out at me, Unwinnable. Unwinnable is a run-of-the-mill gaming news outlet with very limited engagement, as far as I can tell. You probably have never heard of it. If you have, it's definitely not your main source of news. If it is, then I'm really sorry for you.
Yeah, just by looking at
Prominent
those
enough in
titles,
Bellalaра's
dude.
life that she felt it necessary to be listed here, in a thread lamenting the requirement of disclosures, with an added, "the grass is always greener" bent about pre-Gamergate ad safety and transparency requirements. Here's the problem. That name is familiar because I've covered it before as a result of their constant, blatant, and unethical usage of undisclosed, paid advertorials for casino websites. Now, to understand why this matters so very much, especially in a thread like this, we need to define what an advertorial is. An advertorial is a journalistic entity advertising products with given words and typically a financial incentive under the guise of an editorial piece or objective reporting. Fundamentally, that can be fine, but you need to disclose what's happening, of course. In many cases, you might even need to disclose that there isn't a financial relationship. There just needs to be more disclosures, because communicating full and accurate information to the reader on the state of the writer's objectivity is not only a legal, but also ethical requirement. You can make honest mistakes, sure, absolutely, but deliberately hiding any portion of that information is a breach of your ethical duties as a writer or journalist. Unwinnable, as an outlet, crossed my path because it had done in excess of 100 advertorials for casinos, none of which had been disclosed to the public in any visible capacity. As a side note, because I forgot in my original script to include this, all of these articles, or at least most of them, were done under the pseudonym Alan Smithy, which is specifically something that film directors use who wish to disown a project. Basically,
These fucking guys.
They didn't even have a writer technically assigned to them. They were under a false pseudonym, Alan Smithy, a well-known thing that's used to disown projects, and they were doing these dozens, even hundreds of times. Furthermore, as I covered that topic, I talked about another instance where a separate outlet, Bago Games, I believe it was called, had done the same thing in the past. Well, someone who actually worked closely with the leadership at Bago Games reached out to me at that time and expressed that they were still doing it because the money was so good and helped them stay afloat. Since that time, to be accurate, I believe that Bago Games has begun disclosing their ties, if not stopped the acceptance of these deals outright, and therefore solved that ethical problem. Good for them. That's positive. But the point here is Unwinnable, and the hundreds, because I do believe in total.
Also, imagine just being like, who the fuck just reads news articles about gambling video games? Like, who the fuck reads articles about that? You know, I already don't read gaming news articles. Who the fuck would read gaming news articles about gambling? Like, who? What the fuck?
The amount would be that high. At least over 100 were cataloged as of many months ago in that single list that I had. There are hundreds.
Okay, so they're not all about gambling. Most of them are, but I can see. Holy crap, that's a lot of gambling. Like I said, I love how I said most of them. Well, not all of them are about gambling. Every single one of it is about gambling. Holy crap. Oh, not all of them. Okay, no,
online
of course.
casino gambling advertorials. Now let's re-examine this thread. Bellalara Blondo decries this new standard of ethical disclosures as damaging, unnecessary, and even abusive. She lists a series of outlets that inform her opinion, one of which is possibly the largest perpetrator of unethical and undisclosed advertising I have ever seen in this industry in my life. And the takeaway sentiment is best described as, Gamergate was bad because it made corporations expect accurate and ethical disclosures in gaming media, which makes it less profitable. And we shouldn't have to disclose anything ever. So here are my inspirations, one of which is Unwinnable and their highly unethical casino advertising. Obviously, this is just one person and just one outlet on her list. But then again, I don't often deep dive into these kinds of topics.
But let's be honest, that's just most gaming news sites. They don't care about games. They don't care about games. They don't care about being ethical. They don't care about the audience that is supposed to, that they're supposed to be, creating content for. The only thing they care about is money and, well, most of the time, just injecting politics into games, into things, into just trying to inject their political ideas into other people. But they don't care about actually, telling you about the game. They just tell you about the politics in the game or the lack of politics in the game.
Very well be some serious problems with the other names that she
and of course getting paid a lot.
Ask me. And the overarching theme remains pretty consistent. Gamergate bad. Gamergate made us disclose more of the financial and interpersonal ties that we have, which is ethical to do, so Gamergate bad. I cannot realistically extrapolate and say, see, that's how all journalism is because of this one instance. But what I can say
but it's most.
Is that this kind of thread and this kind of
most gaming journalism is like that.
Why a widespread and perceivably growing section of the gaming audience view gaming journalists to be unethical and untrustworthy, most importantly. This kind of messaging, combined with a cited inspirational outlet that is a perfect example of highly unethical reporting, will push the common sentiment in the direction of assuming that games journalism is fully and completely corrupt. It isn't, but the desire to obfuscate disclosure and ethical ties doesn't help at all with that assumption. Why would you do it? Why would you obfuscate? Why would you fail to disclose anything or try not to disclose things if you don't have something to hide? But that's it. If you want to support, please consider signing up on Odyssey, linked down below in the description. It's a YouTube platform alternative that is highly rewarding for its creators. So watching my content there, hey, guess what? Disclosure rewards me financially and is a big deal for the channel.
And here's the thing. It's weird, most people already just don't read news articles anymore, and especially about gaming. Most of the time you can just get the information just from people on YouTube or just forums, whatever, and it's gonna be not only more reliable, but you can pretty easily tell who wrote that, what their opinion is, the way they do things, what they think. It's much easier just get information from other sources that are more, that you can trust a lot more, or that you can just at least learn more about them, so that you can say, okay, maybe I should trust this one, maybe I shouldn't trust this one. But like these fucking news articles are written by like a shit ton of just journalists and writers that you don't know nothing about them, except for like maybe a few other articles that they wrote. But even then, they still have like a shit ton of filters that they have to go through. And of course, with all of the fucking with all the fucking scandals that they had, getting paid, accepting payments and for reviews, for good reviews, and now this, the fact that they don't care about it, about being ethical, they just care about making more money, politics, injecting politics into everything. They just die, and they just don't. It's like they're in a sinking boat, and instead of just trying to, instead of grabbing a bucket and just pulling out the water of the inside of the boat, it's like they just grab water from the sea and just pour it into the boat. Like, I don't know what the fuck they're doing. It's just all like they just want money in the short term, not in the long term. Like, they could just very well just turn around, be ethical, serve the audience what they actually want, actually give the audience what the audience wants, and sure, maybe not make that much money in the short term, but in the long term, you would, just grow an audience like most YouTubers do already. Most YouTubers start like that. Most YouTubers like this, that talk about news and shit like that, they start with nothing, zero views, zero subscribers, and they slowly just build up over the months or years to the point in which they get paid for just covering things honestly, being honest about stuff, doing research. But it's a long-term thing compared to these journalists. They just care about making money. They just care about making a lot of money in the short term, just so then they can once that whatever the fuck they work for closes, or people stops generating money, they could just move to another one and continue like that. It just doesn't make sense to me. And that is also why a lot of these commentary and just news YouTubers and channels and whatever, they started growing a shit ton. Like, over the past few years, they're becoming huge. Why? Because they're the only ones that you can really fucking trust. Like, look at these fucking guys with the Alan Smithy. They're not even putting they're not even putting the real author's name. Like, if you go to this guy, which I'm subscribed to because I watched a few of his videos before, this guy, he has like how many fucking videos? Like at least over 100, I know. You can already fucking build a profile of this guy and say, okay, maybe I should trust him with what he says about this, maybe not about that. He can exaggerate some things about these specific topics and all of that. He might have these kind of biases. But these guys, they could just very well just be giving you a fake author name, and you're not even gonna be able to tell from how to take whatever they're telling you. Easily just know, okay, they're coming in from this perspective, compared to the journalists who you just have no fucking idea, because they could just very easily just give you a fake author name, or they just have so many fucking authors that it's impossible, really. I just don't get it. No.